Hello, Reverend Helen here again from my kitchen. And this time I'm going to talk to you about a special day in the Christian calendar that happens during half term this year. So when I think all of you will be at home. So I wanted you to know a little bit about Ash Wednesday. Now, Ash Wednesday comes after Shrove Tuesday. Shrove Tuesday is next week, and we usually call it now Pancake Day. And we have a bit of a feast. We feast on pancakes because the next day is Ash Wednesday, and that's the beginning of Lent. Talked a little bit about Lent, and we'll talk a bit more about Lent another time. But the first day of Lent is Ash Wednesday, and it's a time when we think about, do you remember me talking about turning to God? We think about how we're going to do that and what we might do during Lent, and about the bad stuff that we want to leave behind. And it's not something that Jesus did. So a lot of the stories I talk to you about are about Jesus' life and about things that happened to Jesus or that Jesus did. But this is not something that Jesus did. This is something that the Christian church developed as a thing they did. Christians began to do it long after Jesus had finished walking on this earth. But they took a very, very old idea. They took an idea that you use ashes to show when you're sorry. And there are some books in the old part of the Bible, what we now call the Old Testament. For instance, in the story of Jonah, when Jonah tried to tell the people of Nineveh that they needed to change because they were behaving so badly, when they realized that, the king of Nineveh got up from his throne, took off his royal robe, and he put on sackcloth, and he sat in ashes to show how sorry he was. So ashes are connected with saying sorry. And right in the very, very beginning of all our stories in the Bible is the special one in Genesis, the first book of the Bible, about how the world began, about the Christian story about how the world began. Now we know now lots more about how the world began. We know about black holes and explosions and all sorts of things that the people who were telling the stories in Genesis had no idea about. But what they did know somehow was that stuff comes from dust and that we go back to dust, that in the end we come from dust and we return to dust. Right now, I'm very much not dust at all. I'm very solid. But we know now through science that all sorts of things are made from dust. So, for instance, all the planets, there's our lovely planet, all the planets come from dust, that we come from stardust, if only we could go far enough back. Stardust, think of that we are the same stuff as stars. We're the same stuff as many, many, many animals. And that keeps happening, recreating, rehappening. New stars die, and then new stars are born. And so we think about Ash as being about beginnings and endings. And Lent is a new beginning, a new chance to say, I'm going to turn to God. I'm going to try to show God's love in the world, to shine my light. But I know there's things I've not done very well and I've got wrong. And I need to know that. I need to be able to say that about myself. And that is true. So on Ash Wednesday, in a special service, or not in a special service this year, but in a service or on their own, Christians will do something to themselves, not a hurting thing, to show how sorry they are and how hard they're going to try to do better. And they do it using ash. So in my house, we have a log fire. By the time that log's burnt down, it's ash. Some people might burn coal. Try to show it to you. By the time the coal's burnt down, it's ash. If you've ever had a barbecue, you'll know there's ash at the end. Now, to begin with, ash is really hot. Don't touch it, ever. It's for the grown-ups to look after. And don't do this. Don't go looking for your own ash. I'm going to tell you about how to get hold of some ash later, but don't go looking for your own ash because it might be hot and it's certainly really messy. So I've got some from my fireplace here, and you can see there are bits of carbonised now wood, and there's a lot of stuff that we really could only call dust. So there's the dust from my fire. Now at the moment it's quite dry. In order to mark myself with the dust, I've mixed it with some olive oil. And that makes a sort of gloop. And with that, say a little prayer, and then I shall mop my forehead. So this is a prayer that Christians might say, and that usually the vicar, that's me, says over the ash before putting a cross on everybody's forehead. So we'd say, Creator God, may this ash remind us to turn to Christ, that we are but dust, and to dust we shall return. It's mixed with some oil, and I'm going to use it on my skin to make the mark of the cross. The idea of the cross being really important in the Christian story because Jesus died on a cross. So a cross is a sign of death, but also of new life. So Christ died and there was a resurrection. There was a new life that came from his death. So we think of it as meaning both death and life. So here I'm going to show you how I do this. So to myself, remember that you are dust, and to dust you will return. Now, it looks a bit like a smudge, but that's the cross on my forehead. Remember that you are dust, and to dust you shall return. And if that had happened in church, we would carry on with the service, sing some hymns, and go home not taking it off as a reminder. And of course, you only realise it's there when you look in the mirror, or you look at somebody else's and you realise they've got it. If you don't want to put it on your forehead and you want to do this at home and your family agree that you might do it at home, you can always do it on your hand like that. So on my forehead or on your hand, you can do it like that. And you will be able to collect some ash and a little prayer from the church porch at Chaldon. And if you wish to, you will be able to mark yourself with a cross. But only if you want to. If you want to walk down to the church, you'll find there a little packet and a little prayer for you to fetch and to use as a family. And you can do that on Ash Wednesday. And you can perhaps think about what you might do in your lives to make the world and your life and your home a better place, more filled with love. So one of the things I'm going to do, and the rest of the people who come to church are going to have a go at, is eating less meat, because we know that if we eat less meat, in fact, we're going to be vegan and eat nothing that comes from animals for one day a week, it's more people in the world will be able to have food. At the moment, not everybody in the world has enough food to eat. So one of the things St. Peter and St. Paul's Church are hoping to do through Lent is to encourage each other to have a day, maybe do the whole of Lent, maybe have one day a week when we don't eat food that comes from animals at all. So that's no eggs, no milk, no meat, but there's lots of alternatives. So we're going to be trying out milk that comes from oats and all sorts of things that come from plants. And we'll find, I'm sure, that we can eat really, really well. And that helps not just us, because it's healthy, but it helps to find ways in which the whole world can be fed, but also ways in which we can stop our world being affected by carbon emissions. That's the story for another time. So that's the story behind Ash Wednesday. And I hope that you might visit the church. Don't go on Tuesday. That's a problem. I'll leave them outside. But you can't get into the church next Tuesday. That's just for parents to know that on the Tuesday the 16th, the porch will be closed because somebody is recording some music in the church. But there will be a box outside where you can collect your ash, and it will have been blessed by me. I will have said a prayer over the ash for you to go and collect. So eat lots of pancakes on Tuesday, and on Wednesday think about that idea that we are dust and to dust we return, that by marking ourselves with the cross, Christians are choosing to say, I'm going to begin Lent in a way that means that I will shine Jesus' light into the world. And there's one more thing. In Lent, the colours in church are this colour. In Lent, we use purple. So purple is the colour for Lent. And I hope that when you finally go into school, you will find some purple squares hanging up on a washing line, a little washing line with purple squares showing you how many days of Lent are left. Because after Ash Wednesday, there will be 10, 20, 30, 40 days in Lent. And Lent ends at Easter.